Hey everyone, today I'm going to be talking about how you can build a portfolio career. I'm going to be talking about what it is and how you can get involved much more. Now I want you to start thinking about this, okay? Now obviously we're used to careers being a specific thing, but I want you to understand that a portfolio career is really a different way of thinking. It's a collection of loads of different factors and experiences in your life that enable you to be unique in terms of your approach. And so when thinking about what a portfolio career is and why it's important, here are some factors to think about, okay? Number one, there is a rise in AI. Okay, so many of you will be aware of ChatGPT. I've spoken about it on my channel. It's amazing how things have changed. There's also DALL-E 2 and other sort of like services that make productivity even more important and easier, so to speak. But it does raise a question in terms of the labor market. Number two, there are situations where leaders and all of that kind of stuff create a toxic culture. And so there are lots of people who are really fed up, which is leading to number three, the great resignation. Okay, there are many different people who are feeling like, I can't take this no more. I don't want this in my life no more. I want something that's going to really validate me as a person and allow me to really flourish in what I'm doing. Okay, this is why portfolio careers are even more important. Number four, there is the gig economy that is increasing. So for those of you who don't know what that is developing a side hustle or some sort of product and service, usually outside of what you're doing. Number five, we've got the cost of living crisis. So we've seen interest rates rise crazily last year. It went from 0% all the way up to 3.5%. I know this was normal back in the day, but for many millennials and Gen Zs, again, this is not a normal thing. And the final thing is around the fact that there is this value that people, organizations see when it comes to contractors. And this is why I talk about contracting quite a lot, because this is something that I'm doing in addition to the other stuff that you see me doing right now. So there are six main sort of like factors that are affecting how we sort of operate and work. And this really leans into this whole idea of having a portfolio career. Now, I want to sort of highlight this point to you. It says here, the Henley Business School predicts that 50% of all professionals will have a portfolio career. 50%. I mean, in the UK alone, there's probably about just under 80 million people. Globally, there's about 7.4, 7.5 billion individuals, so to speak. So 50%. Now, I don't know if this is specifically talking about the West only, but that's a huge number. Okay, that's a huge number, especially if we're thinking about the UK. Again, this is probably applicable to many other versions and countries within this world as well. So think about, how am I pushing towards this thing? Now, I will talk about what a portfolio career is in a second. Now, the three main points I want to focus on is what is a portfolio career, the benefits of having one, and how you can start to begin building one. Now, to plant this in your mind, really, it is an amalgamation of different roles that you have played in life that help you generate income. Okay, so this could be a whole bunch of different things. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So what is a portfolio career? Well, let's lean into that. Now, the term portfolio was originally coined by the philosopher and organizational behavior expert Charles Handy. Okay, so this was back in the 90s. And, you know, he really got us thinking about a different way of looking at career options, okay? Now, this has come from his works called Why You Should Build a Career Portfolio, Not a Career Path, part of the Harvard Business Review that was developed by Castrillo in 2021. So this is where I got this information. Now, a portfolio career has many different types of archetypal types of people. So I want to talk about those different types, and you may start thinking about how this fits in with you as a person, okay? So when thinking about a portfolio career, I want you to think about a mindset. It is a shift in mindset. Rather than thinking about pursuing a career, what you're really doing is creating a career. It's a totally different thing altogether. So we're focusing on something known as lifestyle design, okay? So here are some 5 things that really influence what portfolio career that you might do. So the first thing is income goals, okay? There is a certain amount of money that you want to make as a person. So if you don't make X or you don't make Y, then you're not interested. It's that simple. And some people are shy to talk about money, but really truly it's the truth. We think about money, so that is an important factor. The second thing that is really driving a lot of people in terms of their values and everything else is this whole idea of curiosity and interests and following your passions. So when you follow your curiosities, as the book Masteri talks about by Robert Greene, then you're more likely going to have a motivation to exceed in X skill. Okay. The next thing is this idea of flexible living. The pandemic showed us this. More and more people want to work remotely. And if they don't want to work remotely, they want to flex their lifestyle in such a way where it accommodates them and it doesn't feel like a specific burden. Okay. The other thing I spoke about was passion. So that's a bit deeper than just curiosity and interest. This is something that is pushing you and there is context behind what you are doing. So this may be related to helping other people, or just something that's happened in your past and you're just driven to do it. Okay, I've spoken about drive in previous videos. And the final thing is expertise. People want to be seen as an expert. People want to be respected. And so if they're positioned that way, especially with these 4 other things, then they are more likely going to excel in that specific pursuit. So these are things that are driving this whole idea of a portfolio career, or why people would want to do this specific thing. Now, there is something known as scanners, okay? So this was developed by someone called Barbara Sher in her best-selling book, Refuse to Choose. And she says there are certain types of people that are attracted to portfolio careers. She calls them scanners. Now, psychology has a specific name for them, and that is multipotentialites, okay? And essentially, these types of people have a really strong, what I would call, I guess, intellectual and artistic strength in what they're doing, and they have many different interests and they follow all of them, so to speak. And so they start to acclimatize or amass this type of career that isn't traditional, so to speak. And so thinking about that, that may heavily relate to you. So what I'm going to do now is speak about the different types of people that relate to this portfolio career and try to see which one fits in with you specifically. So let's move on. So here are the 6 different types, okay? So the first type that you see on the top left is the career traditionalist. Now, this is an individual who's pursuing a specific career path and they're trying to climb the ladder. So think of a doctor, an architect, an engineer, maybe someone within the civil service, someone who has that sort of mindset. The next person is the side hustler, okay? So this person's probably fed up with what they're doing, or they want to supplement their income where it's not enough. And so what they do is they start to make money on the side, okay? Now they may want to be a full-fledged entrepreneur at some point in their life, but right now they're not there. And maybe they use things like podcasts, courses, programs, YouTube to really incept their thinking, okay? The next thing we have is the conservative contractor, okay? Now, this conservative contractor is somebody who is going to find contracts, whether that's for the government or whether that's for an SME or whatever it may be. And, you know, this is where you hear things like inside IR35, outside IR35, but they have formally agreed to a contract to deliver something specific. This may also relate to freelancers as well, okay? So they have a certain set of knowledge, skills, or experience that positions them as somebody who is going to be effective for that specific thing. Now, this person can also be an advisor, a non-executive director, a parish councillor, a trustee. They all fall into that sort of space, okay? So yes, of course, contractors make money. Some of these other things don't make money or don't make as much money, but they're paid for their time. And usually they're paid for their time on an hourly basis or on a daily basis, or for the works that they complete. So bear that in mind. Then we have the diversified personal brand. Now, this is somebody who is trying to get themselves out there as a solopreneur, and they have loads of different things going on at one time. They may be coaching, they may be doing programs, facilitation, workshops, talks, they may have a book. There's a whole bunch of stuff that contributes to their income. Now, of course, you can be a mix of these things, but there is a dominant sort of like archetype that people have, okay? So usually these are people who are founders trying to get themselves out there, and they have loads of different interests that fly about. And this type of person needs to be extremely systemized and organized with their approach when it comes to developing certain things. Now, if you're a millennial or a Gen Z, you may be familiar with this term, multifaceted. These people are definitely multifaceted. They get confused by the idea of a niche, so to speak, and they want to focus more on really showing themselves as an individual so that they can shine and people can be attracted to them as a person, making it easier for them to sell. But this uphill climb is quite difficult, especially if nobody knows you. The next thing is the entrepreneurial specialist. Now, this person is really, really good at what they do, and they're hyper focused on a specific niche, and they charge top dollar for making sure that they provide this impact and people get that value as well, and they get value in their pocket. And so there's no sort of like argument to suggest that they're not good at what they do. So if this is you, congratulations. A lot of people are trying to move towards this space, and this is where you see all these gurus and all these types of people in an industry, okay? So they may get a little bit of hate because they're known to be this person, you know, they're known to be this person. So there's going to be polarizing opinion. And the last person is the respected investor. Okay, so this person's been around the block. They're paid well to do what they do, or they were paid well to do what they were doing. And now it's just kind of like people calling them for advice, talks, like coaching here and there. So they kind of run their own ship, and there's nothing really sort of like getting in their way, so to speak. So hopefully that has given you a really strong idea in terms of, again, these different archetypes that exist when it comes to developing a portfolio career. So now what we want to do is start thinking about what are the benefits of a portfolio career? Really important question. So when we think about the benefits, we think about those different types as well. We have to understand that people fall into this mindset shift, okay, from this idea of pursuit to creation because they're fed up of the lack of opportunities that exist. They're looking to move forward and create something for their own. So they want to create their own opportunities. They want to design their lives in such a way that makes sense to them. And they also want to make enough money to gain a sense of freedom. And I always say sense of freedom, never say true freedom. So we have to think about this whole rat race. It's truly killing a lot of people mentally. I mean, there was a document that was developed called the Freelance Project and Gig Economies of the 21st Century. It was a big study that was done, and it showed that on average, people who fall into this whole portfolio career sort of like bracket make on average £74,000 a year. It's quite a lot of money, like £74,000 a year. Think about how much you make a year, okay? Do you make £74,000? And if you do, that's great. If you make more, great. If you don't, then maybe there is something to look into that space. Now, of course, there's going to be pros and cons, and we'll talk about that in a second. But when thinking about what the average wage is within the UK or what people make, I think it's 30K. That's more than double that amount, okay? I think that's 2.5 times pretty much that amount. And so there is something to be said about a portfolio career being fruitful in that sense. So again, let's look at this in a bit more detail. So what are some of the positives or pros for getting into a portfolio career? Well, one of the first things is that if done properly, you can get a greater work-life balance, okay? So if you're trying to create this life, you can position it and direct it a certain way. The second thing is you're able to focus on things that really light you up as a person, that really follow your curiosities. Imagine if you're paid to do stuff that you love. It's just a different yay altogether, okay? Number 3, your network expands naturally, which means that you can create more opportunities, more chances in life to do what you really want to do. The fourth thing is that your income could exponentially increase. Now, thinking about the different archetypes, okay, the traditionalist, the conservative, contractor, and all these other things there, you can see there's kind of a scale in terms of increase in money, okay? And so if you really sort of focused on these things, you're more likely to make more money. The next thing is there is a lot more skills, knowledge, and expertise that you develop. You're going to have to develop these things. You're going to have to develop things like public speaking or copywriting or negotiation or whatever it may be. It's a different way of thinking. And this is why I said it's a mindset. The sixth thing is you're more in control of your future, okay? Because you're creating it. You're not following something blindly. And the last thing is you can work completely by yourself if you choose to. Now, that's hard to do because no man or woman is an island, but it is possible. And if not completely by yourself, you can work more independently, so to speak. Now let's look at some of the disbenefits or the cons, so to speak. Now these are really the opposite of what I said before. So work-life balance in this day and age could be a myth, okay? So getting there could create more work for you. That's the reality of the situation. I know for me, I can work crazy hours, but I'm only doing that because I'm motivated by what I love. I'm not chasing this idea. Well, I guess to an extent I am, but I enjoy what I do is what I'm saying. The second thing is your focus could easily be scattered. I spoke about this really rich and, empowering idea of multifacetedness, but the problem is being multifaceted in some ways means you're all over the place. And so you have to find ways to channel it and organize it a certain way. The third thing is you can take on too much work and you can be overwhelmed. I've been burnt out many times before in my life. And that's because I didn't have the right systems. I was taking on too much. There was this ego complex that was part of this that meant that I was affected mentally, okay? And also if you're doing things that you don't enjoy, whether this is, at work or whatever, this affects your sense of integrity to self, authenticity, and your levels of mental health as well. The next thing is your income can be very unpredictable. If you've never been a contractor before, if you've never done any of that stuff, you won't really understand how it can really affect you. Okay, so if you don't have a certain mindset, then you may be like working anxious all the time. That's not a way to work. Following from that is sometimes it's hard to get work based on your niche and or the market. Things are changing all the time. I spoke about all of those things at the beginning. AI, the great resignation, perceptions of, organizations. All these different things affect the market. And so if the market is affected heavily, then that may pose a problem for you. Some people prefer to be in less control and they prefer to be told what to do. I know that sounds like a crazy thing to say, but it's true. Some people want to be told this is how you do it. Let's think about it. When you first start a role or job or whatever it may be, you need someone, a mentor-like figure, to show you the ropes before you can sort of fly yourself. And so that's another thing to think about. Maybe you're a person who prefers to be told what to do. And the final thing is, it can be a lonely road, so to speak. Okay, so, if you're doing this by yourself and, you don't have anyone around you who's doing something similar or anything else, yeah, it can be lonely. I definitely felt that. I'm like, I feel like I'm the only person doing this. And sometimes when you ask other people, you don't necessarily get the support or response that you need, because it requires an empathetic and contextual sort of understanding. So these are things to bear in mind when it comes to this stuff. And I guess, I should have asked this before, but I want to ask you, what camp do you sit in? Okay. Do you sit in the benefits camp where it's kind of like, yeah, this makes sense for me, this is more me? Or do you sit in the kind of cons or negative camp? What archetype are you? Are you the diversified personal brand? Are you the respected investor? Are you the conservative contractor? Again, which one are you? For me personally right now, I would say I'm probably the conservative contractor leaning into the diversified personal brand. And with that in mind, there have been many people who've been asking me about this whole contracting space. So if you've never seen any of my videos or anything like that before, well, again, this is an opportunity to check out my course called The Independent Consultant. It's an effective course that really breaks down how you can be a contractor specifically within the UK. So again, if this is something that you're interested in and you want to learn more about, then you can click the link below to find out more information. And yeah, you can gain access to it as soon as possible. So let's move on to the last final section, which is all centered around building a portfolio career. Now, this is a very loaded section because there is so much that can be spoken about, okay? And I'd like to give you some things to consider. Now, the first thing is, remember, building a portfolio career is a mindset. It's not about pursuit, it's about creation, okay? So it's a different way of navigating things. Now, even if you're in a role such as medicine or architecture, whatever it may be, you can still build a portfolio career, okay? Now, if you're not in this space, okay, then I would encourage you, maybe you should get into contracting, okay? If you have the resilience or the fortitude or the urge, I would say get into contracting. There's a number of reasons why I'd say that. It forces you to learn how to survive. It forces you to not be dependent on the system. It forces you to think a certain way. It forces you to work out how to manage your money effectively. And the great thing about this is that you get paid handsomely for it as well. So if this makes sense to you, then again, you can check out my course for more information. Of course, you can check things out on the internet, X, Y, and Z. You can speak to contractors, but I would urge you to get into that space. Now, if this is too much for you, you're kind of like, fam, you're telling me to do the most right now. Okay, don't worry about contracting for now. Like I said, it's a portfolio career. There are many different things you can do. Maybe if you're still sort of working in the sort of traditional career, or the career traditionalist as an example, then maybe you want to consider some of the following things, okay? So maybe you want to focus on selling some sort of product and or service, okay? Now, there are different ways to think about this. Number one, if you're selling a product or service, it doesn't have to be your own product or service. You could be doing affiliate marketing. So affiliate marketing is basically signing up to someone's product and selling it on their behalf, making anywhere between 1 to 70% commission. So if I sell something for £100 and Sarah wants to be an affiliate marketer on my behalf, maybe I give her 50%. She gets £50, I get £50. We both win. It's a win-win. So partnering with other organizations that approve you is a great way of doing this. Now, there's also network marketing. Okay, I've spoken about this before. Now, I've done network marketing back in the past, and look, it's not for everyone, and I vow that I would never do it again. So hopefully I don't do it again. Love the model. I love the initial environment. I love what they're trying to do, and not all network marketing organizations are terrible. I'm not necessarily saying they're bad. However, it is a great breeding ground for developing your entrepreneurial skills and endeavors. It's a great breeding ground for allowing you to understand what you want to focus on when it comes to your own portfolio career. You learn how to sell, you learn how to negotiate, you learn how to present, you learn how to be a leader, you learn all these things. So even contracting and network marketing as breeding grounds and learning is fantastic in that way. You're learning so many entrepreneurial skills, which I think are required to develop a strong portfolio career. So think about that in mind in terms of those two different options. The other thing to consider is you create your own product or service, okay? And you can do that yourself. Maybe you want to create a digital product. So I've spoken about courses in this presentation. Maybe you want to develop your own course. Maybe you have a specific niche or expertise or skill where you can teach others. So maybe you want to be a coach. So there are options out there that can supplement you if you're in a traditional career. It's perfectly fine. And look, you don't have to jump into these things straight away. You know, all of these things require you to build an audience of some sorts and engage with those people. You know, usually how it goes is you develop something and, you know, you start talking about it more. People are interested. They become leads. You speak to them on a deeper level. And if they're happy, they become customers. That's just one example, okay? But they require you to have an audience. Now, you really need to think to yourself, like, what do I want to focus on? Of course, I spoke about this whole idea of multi-potentialites and multifaceted individuals, but really you want to focus on your Ikigai, okay? Your Ikigai is basically the intersection between what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. These are all important stuff. If you can try and find that intersection, then you're in a position where, again, you're doing better than most because you're focusing on things that lights you up but helps other people as well. Really, really important stuff. So don't forget that. And another way of thinking about it is, okay, in the last 3 years, when I look back, what have I specifically learned? Okay, how did I overcome specific challenges? That's a question you need to ask yourself. You know, in what different ways can I help other people? That's another thing to think about. Really, when you're thinking about helping other people, it's thinking about how can I do some of the followings? And this is not a criteria. This is just an example to help you think about it. How can I help people save money, make money, or how can I save people time? The other thing I would add to that is, how can I make people think differently? How can I invoke certain emotions in people? And the last thing is, what message do I want to invoke to the world? What do I want people to know about? What have I learned that has shaped my thinking? So these are all things to think about when it comes to this specific sort of like side of developing a portfolio career. So really sort of like try to understand like what this means for you. Now, there's this whole argument of, do I focus on a niche or do I follow my curiosities and interests? I think it's a mix of the two, okay? You kind of have to experiment, but really the market will decide based on engagement with your stuff, how excited they are based on what you're saying. Now, when developing this sort of like side of things for your portfolio career, you want to develop a personal brand. And that personal brand is really tailored around developing some sort of material, okay? So you want to develop a system that shares your premium thoughts on a weekly basis and distributes this on social media. You've heard about this in so many different forms, whether this is, you know, Gary Vee or whoever it may be talking about it. Now, these premium thoughts can be displayed in so many different ways. They can be done as a newsletter, as a blog post, as a YouTube video, as a podcast, or even as a keynote speech or talk, okay? So you have to think to yourself, what premium thoughts do I want to talk about? Now, the best way I've illustrated this is through this sort of like diagram that I've developed, okay? So let me make this a bit bigger. So you have to find ways to generate ideas. And once you've generated those ideas and you've collected those ideas, you choose one that resonates with you. You do some research to try to back this up. And the research will help inform you drafting or developing the written form or the video form or audio form of what you're trying to produce. Now, I prefer to write and then do everything afterwards. Some people say you can do video and then do everything afterwards because you can transcribe and stuff, but I prefer to write first. I think that sets a solid foundation. Once that's done, you want to make sure that all the edits are done properly, make it as optimizable as possible in terms of, you know, the platform you're posting it on, that's known as SEO, search engine optimization. And then you can publish and or schedule this information so that people can see this in a repetitive process. That is the system. You then want to extract from that different micro pieces of content that comes from those premium thoughts. And again, you're doing the same thing. You're looking at your newsletter or you're looking at your blog or your YouTube and you're extracting stuff and turning them into bite-sized pieces of social media that you can display on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever your preference is for your audience or for the people that you want to share this information with. I said that really weird. Anywho, the point being made is this is how I do it. This is how many other people do it. This is how you can do it as well. It's just about finding a system that makes sense for you. And what you'll find is that you'll feel more confident speaking about stuff it will be easier to generate ideas when speaking about this stuff because you're developing your personal brand. And I believe a personal brand goes hand in hand with building a portfolio career. And in addition to that, you're going to get more people engaging with you. You're going to get more people asking you questions and wanting to find out how they can do X, Y, and Z based on what you've done. That's how it works. It's a bit of a learning curve. I can't lie. Like, there are skills you're going to have to develop, such as maybe copywriting or marketing or persuasion or public speaking skills or whatever it may be. But these things can be learned. If they can't be learned just on the YouTube sort of like thing, really dive deep and study other people in your industry who is doing this stuff really well, or part of an industry that you're leading into, because we're all multi-potentialites out here. So think about this stuff really seriously. And I guess another way of doing this is networking. You know, you want to go to networking events and connect with people on a level. And with this, you know, whether this is online or offline, you have to be comfortable speaking about yourself. And this is why I spoke about the Ikigai. Obviously, you can develop a sort of like little thing that you can say again and again and again, and all this kind of stuff there. In my previous videos, you would have seen me say the same thing again and again and again at the beginning of a video because I was confident about what I was talking about. I do the same thing when I'm contracting. So get comfortable, get confident speaking about this stuff. And so these networking events are opportunities to collaborate with different people, you know, see opportunities in different ways, all of that kind of stuff there. Okay. Now, sometimes the easiest way to see yourself is a coach of some sorts that is teaching people stuff based on things they've learned in the last 3 years at least, okay? And you may evolve. This is the beauty of a portfolio career, but if you have people who are interested in your stuff, then that's okay. Now, I've put this slide up here because I think another way of doing this is not so active in that way. It's investing, okay? Investing is another way. And I say not as active, what I really mean is less in the limelight, so to speak. Investing is a great way of doing this. And there are different ways that you can invest in order for you to gain the returns that you want and build a certain type of portfolio career. Now, there are conservative ways of doing it. There are more liberal ways of doing it. But again, this can be done alongside, a career traditionalist as an example. So I would still urge you, however, if you are going down this route, to share your learnings as an investor, because I'm seeing this quite a bit, whether this is on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever it may be. Investors are now becoming these gurus or these, personal development style type people, and they're allowed to do that, of course. But it's kind of like, if I'm rich, I know what I'm talking about sort of thing mentality. So all I'm saying is share your stuff if you're going down this route. And here are some options. This is not exhaustive, by the way, but this is something to think about. There is index funds, okay, or ETFs. So this is a collection of different markets or organizations or companies that are within a specific niche or market, so to speak, that usually do well over a specific period of time. So for example, I invest in the S&P 500. I use Trading 212 to do this, which is a free platform, a great platform for this. You can watch your money grow conservatively by 6 to 12% each year. Okay, of course that is dependent upon what happens in the markets. That's not a guarantee. There's also stock investing or trading. Okay, so this is a bit more aggressive and a bit more erratic. So this is very much more dependent upon the markets, slightly different approach. And again, this is if you want to really be involved in this whole sort of space. There's also property investing. Everybody loves property because it's the old school sexy way of becoming rich and all this kind of stuff there. So these are things to think about. There's also cryptocurrency, which is the new kid on the block. It's been around, I want to say since 2009, but I may be wrong. It hasn't necessarily had this sense of stability and foundation set yet, but again, a lot of people believe in the future of it. So there is something to think about there. There's NFTs, non-fungible tokens. So again, this is kind of similar to the whole cryptocurrency scene. It's had the same sort of effect, but again, people recognize it as a future. There's also things like art. My friend invested a couple thousand in an art piece the other day, and he's just waiting for that investment to grow. So there is opportunities within all these different spaces. So hopefully this is giving you a clear idea. Now, to summarize all of this information, here are the main points. The first thing is, number one, a portfolio career is a mindset. You have to remember this. Don't think of it in terms of a pursuit. Think of it as something that you're creating. Also remember that there are 6 different types of archetypes, and you need to decide which one you fit into the most, at least anyway. The second thing to say is that there are so many benefits of having a career such as, being in a portfolio career. So this is work-life balance. This is also getting paid much more. You can design and think about your well-being and all of those different things. And the last thing to say is that building a portfolio career requires you to curiously follow your interests, okay? You are creating this. It's not a pursuit. And so think about your Ikigai, okay? What is the intersection of all these different things I spoke about before? It's really important, because once you understand what your Ikigai is, then you can start developing materials and information to share to other people so that you can build your personal brand, you can build your portfolio, gain more opportunities, and make more income in the process as well, whilst designing this sense of freedom or autonomy that you're aiming to have. So hopefully that gives you a strong idea. Hopefully it gives you a sense of what you need to be focusing on when building a portfolio career. Okay, it's here right now. You have one whether you see it or not. It just depends on whether you've shifted your mindset in that way. Okay, now again, you know, like I said before, if you're interested in developing your own sort of like portfolio career and you believe that contracting is the way to go for you, then again, click the link below to check out the Independent Consultant UK. And again, this is a comprehensive guide in terms of how you can become a contractor. Okay. Now, if you like seeing videos centered around positive psychology, life management, and portfolio careers, then make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.